The crimson hologram flickered to life above Earth's communication array, casting an ominous glow across the United Nations Assembly Hall. Ambassador Zia Rahman stood frozen at the podium, her dark eyes reflecting the alien transmission that had just changed everything. Humans of the third planet, the hegemony's representative spoke through translators, its voice a mechanical rasp that sent chills down every spine in the room. Your species has been observed. Your expansion ends now. You will submit to hegemony rule, surrender your weapons, and serve as a labor caste. You have 72 of your hours to comply. Resistance will result in total extinction. The hologram vanished, leaving behind a silence so profound that Zia could hear her own heartbeat thundering in her ears. Around her, delegates from every nation sat stunned, their faces pale with the weight of humanity's first contact and what might be its last. Zia cleared her throat, her voice cutting through the shocked quiet. "Well," she said, a grim smile playing at the corners of her mouth, "I suppose that settles the question of whether we're alone in the universe." 3 days later, Admiral Elsa Nordstrom stood on the bridge of the UNS Defiance, watching as the last of humanity's hastily assembled fleet took formation around her flagship. The Black Armada, as the media had dubbed it, was a patchwork force that shouldn't have existed. Every nation had contributed something. Old nuclear submarines retrofitted with experimental jump drives, military satellites repurposed as kinetic weapons platforms, even civilian vessels armed with mining equipment and construction tools. "Ma'am," her tactical officer reported, "the hegemony fleet has just entered the outer system. 200 vessels, each one the size of a city." Elsa nodded grimly. Intelligence suggested the aliens had conquered 17 star systems with similar ultimatums. Not one species had chosen to fight, but then again, none of those species were human. "All ships, this is Admiral Nordstrom," she broadcast across the fleet's communications network. "Today we face an enemy that believes might makes right. They've conquered worlds by intimidation alone, expecting every species to bow before their superior numbers and technology." She paused, looking out at the assembled ships, rust bucket freighters flying alongside gleaming destroyers, research vessels packed with experimental weapons, hospital ships converted to carry Marines. They don't understand humans very well, do they? Across the fleet, crews began to cheer. Elsa continued, "They want us to kneel? They can go to hell. All ships advance to contact. Let's show these bastards what happens when you threaten Earth." The Black Armada surged forward, its mismatched vessels spreading into attack formations that would have made any military academy instructor weep. But what they lacked in uniformity, they made up for in sheer audacity. The hegemony fleet waited in perfect formation, their massive dreadnoughts arranged in the precise patterns that had cowed 17 civilizations. Their commander, a being known as the Arbiter, watched the approaching human vessels with something resembling amusement. Primitive kinetic weapons and chemical rockets, his tactical assessment read. No energy shielding detected. No coherent battle doctrine observed. Estimated time to victory, 6 minutes. The Arbiter had never encountered a species that fought like cornered animals. The first human salvo struck the hegemony line like a hammer blow. Ancient nuclear warheads, their payloads enhanced with antimatter charges scavenged from particle accelerators, bloomed against alien shields. Construction mechs originally designed for asteroid mining tore into the hulls of ships 10 times their size with diamond-tipped drills and fusion cutters. But it was the civilian vessels that truly bewildered the aliens. Hospital ships rammed damaged hegemony cruisers, their medical bays converted to carry armed Marines who boarded enemy vessels in EVA suits. Agricultural transports released clouds of genetically modified organisms that ate through alien hull materials. Even luxury yachts joined the fray, their owners using them as guided missiles packed with every explosive they could find. "What manner of tactical doctrine is this?" the Arbiter demanded as another of his dreadnoughts fell to a converted garbage scow that had somehow breached his flagship's shields. His tactical officer, if such terms applied to the hegemony's rigid hierarchy, transmitted the analysis with visible confusion. "Sir, they appear to be improvising. Every ship is operating independently with no central command structure we can identify. They're using weapons and tactics we have no doctrine to counter." The tide of battle shifted when Admiral Nordstrom made a decision that would be studied in military academies for centuries to come. Instead of engaging the enemy fleet in a traditional battle of attrition, She ordered the Black Armada to scatter and regroup beyond the enemy's sensor range. "All ships implement Crazy Ivan Protocol," she commanded, using the code name for humanity's most desperate gambit. Across the solar system, human vessels began a coordinated suicide run. Not at the enemy fleet, but at the asteroids and space stations that formed humanity's infrastructure. In a move that defied every known rule of warfare, they began destroying their own strategic assets. The Arbiter watched in incomprehension as human ships turned their weapons on mining stations, orbital habitats, and even the moon's industrial complexes. "They're destroying their own civilization," he observed. "Are they surrendering?" His answer came in the form of a massive debris field that suddenly accelerated toward his fleet at a significant fraction of the speed of light. The humans had turned every piece of destroyed infrastructure into a kinetic weapon, using their own settlements as ammunition, but the killing blow came from an unexpected source. Dr. Sarah Chen, the architect of humanity's first experimental FTL drive, had been working frantically in the depths of CERN since the ultimatum arrived. As the battle raged above, she activated a device that no sane engineer should have built, a quantum entanglement torpedo that would either open a gateway to another dimension or tear a hole in space-time itself. It did both. The resulting spatial anomaly consumed 3 hegemony dreadnoughts instantly and sent gravitational shock waves throughout the system. But more importantly, it opened a window that allowed every human ship to observe the hegemony's true fleet positions, their command protocols, and their critical weaknesses. Within hours, the tide had turned completely. The Black Armada, reinforced by mining ships converted to missile platforms and research vessels armed with experimental weapons, systematically dismantled the hegemony fleet using tactics that bordered on insanity. The final engagement took place near Jupiter, where the Arbiter's flagship made its last stand. Admiral Nordstrom personally led the boarding action, accompanied by Marines who had trained in zero-G construction work and asteroid mining. They cut through the alien ship like it was made of paper. When the Arbiter finally faced Elsa in his command chamber, the alien being seemed genuinely puzzled. "Your species fights without honor," he declared through his translator. "You destroy your own infrastructure, sacrifice your own vessels, employ tactics that no civilized race would consider. How do you expect to rebuild after such destruction?" Elsa looked around the wrecked command center, noting the pristine efficiency of its design, the cold perfection of hegemony technology. Then she smiled, an expression that somehow managed to be both weary and fierce. "You know what your problem is?" she said, shouldering her rifle. "You're thinking like conquerors. We're thinking like survivors, and humans have been surviving impossible odds since we first walked out of Africa 100,000 years ago." She gestured toward the viewport, where the scattered remnants of the Black Armada were already beginning salvage operations, turning hegemony wreckage into new weapons and ships. "We don't rebuild. We adapt, we overcome, and we never ever kneel." The Arbiter's response was lost in translation as Admiral Nordstrom's Marines secured the ship. But across 17 conquered star systems, the message was clear. The humans had spoken and the galaxy was listening. Back on Earth, Ambassador Zia Rahman stood once again at the UN podium. But this time she faced not fear but hope. The debris fields in space were already being converted into new stations. The experimental technologies developed during the crisis were revolutionizing human space travel. And somewhere in the depths of space, the Black Armada continued its patrol. No longer a desperate last stand, but the foundation of humanity's first interstellar navy. "We received an ultimatum," Zia announced to the assembled delegates and the watching world. "We were ordered to kneel. Instead, we chose to stand, and in standing, we discovered something the hegemony never understood. That freedom isn't something you can take from a species that refuses to give it up." The applause that followed could be heard across the solar system, carried by the quantum communication arrays that Dr. Chen's research had made possible. And in that moment, humanity took its first real step into the greater galaxy, not as subjects or servants, but as equals who had earned their place among the stars. The age of human expansion had truly begun.